next important thing to know about the mining allowance is the qualifying cost to enjoy this allowance. And in this type of allowance, the qualifying cost is one, the cost of searching, testing, and gaining access to the mineral deposits. The cost of searching, testing, and gaining access to mineral deposits. We also have the cost of acquiring rights over the mineral deposits. The cost of acquiring rights over the mineral deposits. Then we also have the cost of specialized mining equipment which have little or no salvage value at the end of the mining operation. So these are the specialized equipment specifically for the mining operation. So here it is important to remember that depending on the type of mineral being mined, then we also have specialized equipment for that specific activity. And once this activity is over, this equipment may have little or no salvage value. And in most of the cases, the equipment might just be abandoned at the site. So therefore, these kind of specialized mining equipment will also qualify for the mining allowance. Then we also have the cost of building at sites which have little or no value at the end of the mining operation, such as which can have some staff quarters at the mining operation. We can also have a go down at the site of the operation, a store at the site of the operation. These are the buildings we are saying they will also qualify for the mining operation because at the stoppage, at the cessation of the mining operation, this building might have little or no salvage value. And in most of the cases, they might just be abandoned at the site of the operation or they must just be brought down. So these buildings also enjoy the mining allowance. But if a building, for instance, a go down, we have a go down in the town near the mining operation, that go down will enjoy the industrial building allowance normally, but not the mining operation. So the one at the site will enjoy the mining operation. The one in the town near the mining operation will enjoy the industrial building allowance. That's the difference between the two buildings. Then we also have the development costs. The development costs will also enjoy the mining allowance. Then we also have the general administration expenses. They will also enjoy the mining allowance. Consultancy fees and expenses will also enjoy the mining allowance. So basically, this forms the qualifying cost for this type of allowance, which is known as the mining allowance granted to investors in the mining operations. So basically 40% in the first year and 10% in the second up to the 7 year. Again, meaning that a mining operation will have a working life of about 7 years. So the whole cost is to be written off within a period of 7 years. So this qualifying cost is a subject of memorizing. One has to memorize so that one can be able to know which costs qualify for the mining operations, for the mining allowance in this case. Now, after knowing the mining allowance and how it is computed, we will go to another type of allowance, another type of capital allowance, which in this case is the farm works deduction. In this case, the farm works deduction. Now, this farm works deduction is abbreviated as FWD, that is the farm works deductions. The most important thing, again, to know as far as the farm work deductions is concerned is to know who qualifies for this kind of allowance, who qualifies for the farm work deduction. Just like in the other cases where we looked at the shipping investment deduction, and our key thing was who qualifies for this allowance and at what rate is it granted and what is the qualifying cost. The same thing we are going to do for the farm work deduction, that who qualifies for this kind of allowance. Now, this is a capital allowance granted to a farmer on capital expenditure incurred on an agricultural land, in question. So capital allowance granted to a farmer on the agricultural land in question. So this a business, this is a farming activity, a business which is a farming activity. Now, the rates of granting this allowance have been changing over time. The rates of granting this allowance have been changing over time. Up to December 2006, the rate was 33.30% on the qualifying cost. Remember, I'm repeating the word qualifying cost because capital allowances are granted on the qualifying cost. Then it changed. From January 2007 to December 2011, the rate was improved or it increased to 50%. Now, these rates are per annum. These rates are per annum. Meaning that when the rate was 33.30% per annum, that is on a straight line basis, it means the all capital expenditure incurred on the agricultural land would be written off in 3 years' time. How are we getting 3 years? 3 years is 100%, that is the whole cost, divided by 33.30%. That would give us 3 years. So the whole cost incurred on the agricultural land qualifying for this allowance would be written off in 3 years. Then it was increased in January 2007 to December 2011 to 50% per annum. Again, meaning that the whole cost would be written off in 2 years. It would be written off in 2 years. In other words, the farm work deductions would be enjoyed for the first 2 years. For the first 2 years of use of the farm works. So again, remember here, it is only granted if the farm works are being used. They must be in use in the agricultural land in question. Then, from January 2012 to December to date, the rate has been increased to 100% per annum. Again, the meaning of this is that the whole cost is written off in the first year of use of the farm works. Is written off in the first year of use of the farm works. So that is at the rate of 100% per annum. And so as you can see, there has been an improvement of the rates of giving the farm work. Basically, the objective is to encourage the growth of the agricultural sector. Remembering that agriculture is the backbone of the economy of Kenya. So tax here is coming into play and giving this type of an allowance as an incentive to the farmers engaged in the business of farming activity. And that is why it has been increasing over time, and it has increased up to 100% to encourage the development and the growth of the agricultural activities or the farming activities, the agriculture being a backbone of the economy of Kenya. Now, once we know the rates for granting this kind of allowance, then it is important to know the meaning of the word farm works. So here we've just written the name farm works. So it is important to understand what is farm works. Now, farm work is structures, is any structures necessary for the proper operation of the agricultural farm in question. Structures necessary for the proper operation of the farm work in question. And so it is defined by inclusion, as in what should we include under farm works. So these structures include, among others, the following: the reaper quarters. We have the reaper quarters or the staff quarters. The reaper quarters or the staff quarters. It also includes the farmhouse. It includes stores. or granaries for storing the grains or whatever produce from the agricultural farm. It also includes the irrigation channels or irrigation systems. They also form part of the farm works. It also includes things like the cow shed. It includes cattle dip, cow shed, cattle dip, also are part of the farm works. It includes fences, excluding the live fence, fences excluding the live fence. It also includes structures like the chicken pen, the rabbit hutch for those engaged in those kind of activities of rearing chicken and rabbit, a pigsty for those engaged in the agricultural activities of pig rearing. It includes the dog kennel. It includes the feeding troughs. It also includes the water supply works, such as the tanks. So basically, those are among us the items that are included in our definition of farm works deductions, the definition of our farm work deductions. Now, within the farm works, there is gapions. It is sometimes common to come across gapions. Though gapions is a capital expenditure incurred on agricultural farms, gapions do not form part of the farm works. And the whole cost of the gapions is written off. The whole cost is allowable in the year it is incurred. In the year it is incurred. So basically, farm works are the necessary structures for the operation of the agricultural farm in question. Agricultural farm in question, including the ones that I have given as examples. Then, it is important to note now, for a farmhouse owned by a sole trader or a partnership, only a third of the cost qualifies for the farm work deductions. It is important to note that a farmhouse which is owned by a sole proprietor or a partnership, only a third of the cost qualifies for the farm works deductions. This limitation does not apply to limited companies. It only applies to sole traders and the partnerships. Then, once we know that we know the assets or the farm works that qualify for this kind of allowance, then it is important to know the general layout for the computation of the farm work deductions. The general layout for the computation of the farm work deductions. Now, generally, what we show is the nature of the farm works. So we list down the nature of the farm works. I've just given one example, and in this particular case, I've taken a cattle dip. A cattle dip is an example of a farm work. And we would have the second column showing the qualifying cost. Showing the qualifying cost. And in this case, I've taken a figure of 200,000. Then we would indicate the rate of farm works. Why I'm indicating the rate of farm works is because it has kept on changing. So it is important to indicate the rate at which we are going to grant the farm works. Then we have the amount of farm work deductions. In this particular case, if the rate of farm work deductions is 100% and the qualifying cost is 200,000, then it means the amount of farm work deduction is 100% of 200,000, which would be 200,000, which would be 200,000. So generally, this would be the simplest way of the presentation for the computation of the farm works deductions. The computation of the farm works deductions. A few notes to note in this particular case are the following points to note. 1, farm work deduction is computed on a straight line basis. That I have already said, that farm work deductions is computed on a straight line basis on the qualifying costs. Farm work deduction is computed on a straight line basis on the qualifying costs. Then, the second point to note is that if the farm work is sold before the farm work's deductions have been claimed in full, if the farm work is sold before the farm work deductions have been claimed in full, then the buyer will inherit the residue of the farm work deduction based on the owed asset. So the buyer will inherit the residue of the farm work deduction based on the cost of the owed asset. So in this particular case, this only will only apply where the rates of the farm work deductions were other than 100%. For instance, where it was 50%. If the buyer bought the farm works after the first owner and claimed 50% for the first year, the second owner will claim farm work deductions of 50%, which is the remaining balance. Remember, we have said where it is 50%, the first year is 50%, the next year is 50%. So if it is sold after 1 year, then the first owner had claimed 50%. The second owner will claim the remaining balance, which is 50%. Therefore, the purchase price of the buyer will be, in this case, ignored and will enjoy the farm work deductions on the original cost of the original owner. Then, the other important thing to note is that the farm works can be sold in the course of the year. If that happens, then the buyer and the seller will enjoy the farm works deductions proportionately to the period the farm works were owned. So if the original owner used the farm works for only 5 months during the year, he will enjoy farm work deductions for a period of 5 months. The second buyer will enjoy farm work deductions for the remaining part of the year, in this case, the 7 months. So the farm work deductions for a full year will be computed, and the original owner will enjoy it for the number of months he was using the farm works, and the buyer will enjoy the farm work deductions for the remaining part of the year where he used the farm works. So it is important to note here that farm works deductions are granted when the farm works are being used. So basically, once we have known who qualifies for the farm work, in this case the farmer who is engaged in the agricultural activity, and we have known the rates of the farm work deductions over a period of time, and we have also seen the layout of the computation of the farm work with an illustration where I've used the cattle dip of 200,000 and obtained the amount of the farm work deductions. Then it is important to finally say that all these type of capital allowances that we have considered, starting from the wear and tear allowance, the industrial building allowance, the mining allowance, the shipping investment deduction, and the farm work deductions, all reduces the taxable income of the business. They are used for reducing the taxable income of a business. So the purpose of computing all these allowances is to enable the trader or the business to reduce the taxable income. So all businesses are therefore encouraged to take advantage of the capital allowances. The reason being, capital allowances reduces the taxable income of a business, and the tax liability eventually is reduced. So all the traders are therefore encouraged to take advantage of the capital allowances because, as we are saying, the capital allowances are used to reduce the taxable income of a business. More so where you have seen the capital allowances being granted at the rates of 100% on the qualifying cost. 100% on the qualifying cost. So where a business is applicable, where minimum